head of a sports team made up of all of his creations. Spider-Man, Thor, Iron Man, etc.
Well, what do you mean, etc.? You could have mentioned them, but all right, we'll go with etc. People often ask me, which of the DC characters would I have liked to have written? And it really doesn't matter to me, because I like writing anything. I think if I had done Superman, I would have done him differently. I would have made him more vulnerable. I think the idea of being able to do anything makes you a little uninteresting.
They said he was able to leap over tall buildings with a single bound. They never said he could fly with no means of propulsion. Take Marvel. I'll tell you a funny thing about them, though, to give you an idea of how creative and imaginative they are. When we started with the superheroes, we were called Atlas Comics. The Marvel movies are the biggest money-making movies of all. And, you know, it's funny. I keep thinking DC could probably make a lot more money with Superman and Batman if they announced that I'd have a cameo in one. People wouldn't believe it. They'd have to go to the theater and see it. We ought to change our name. We ought to get a great name that would represent the company the way it is now. So after thinking a while, I came up with Marvel Comics, and it was a great name. Now, DC. They were called National Comics years ago. And when we changed our name to Marvel, some genius over at National Comics said, "Hey, we ought to change our name too." So we became Marvel. And what did they change their name to? DC. That'll give you an idea of the kind of competition we had.
Batman is a good idea. It's interesting, the writer of Batman, the fellow who created Batman, Bob Kane, was a friend of mine. And he was a funny guy, just the opposite of me. He would go to a restaurant with me, we'd have dinner. The minute the waiter came over, "Do you know who I am? I'm Bob Kane. I created Batman. Here, I'll draw you a picture." I wanted to crawl under the table. I would never say anything like that.
So, you have to trade one of your characters to distinguish competition, DC, for one of their characters. Which of your characters do you trade, and which of theirs do you select?
Trade one of the Marvel characters, one of the ones I helped to create, with, the DC characters? I think we better just forget that question, but before I become very insulted.
I think DC Comics is a company that publishes superhero comic books.
But he was so happy and proud of what he had done, and he was always late. Every time we have dinner with our wives, if the appointment was for 8 o'clock, he'd get there at 1:15. And we try to top each other. Joan and I would say at the next dinner, "You know what, let's be 20 minutes late, we'll show him." So we'd get there 20 minutes late, but he won, he'd be a half hour late. And we'd say, "Let's get there 3/4 of an hour late," he'd be there an hour late. I mean, I couldn't beat this guy.
I wanted Thor to be able to fly. So I found the most scientific method you could find. He takes his hammer, which is fastened to his wrist by a leather thumb, and he twirls the hammer as fast as a propeller, and then he lets go. Well, the hammer goes flying. He's attached to it. He goes flying.
The DC characters, some of them are great. I wish I had created them, but there's no way I would trade mine for theirs. There was a time about, 6, 7, 8 years ago when DC Comics asked me, they wanted to do a series of books called What If Stan Lee Had Created the DC Universe, or something like that. and they asked me to write Superman, Batman, the Wonder Woman, the Green Lantern, and I don't know, 10 or 12 of their books, as if I had created them. So I changed all of them around. I made Batman a black man. I made the Flash a female. I just for fun, just to make them different. I really enjoy doing it.
I think they should actually make a Stan Lee movie. Like,
I
have you
think
as the lead.
I think of every one of them as a Stan Lee movie. The cameo, of course, is the high spot. I did such a wonderful thing for the human race that why do I have to pay taxes? Shouldn't I be tax exempt? Nobody else has created these characters. Use your influence. Contact Washington.
I will.
Okay, thank